paradox is the constant thread running through everything we do. On the surface, it can look like a choice between this or that, yet deeper consideration reveals it's never quite that simple. The real challenge often isn't about picking a side. It's about striking a balance between opposing forces that somehow both hold truth. People tend to want things to be black and white, right or wrong, success or failure, freedom or constraint. Yet everyday experience suggests most things live in the space between. One example is how society often praises a particular behavior until it becomes excessive. It might start out as productive to push oneself to work longer hours, but at some point, that same dedication can turn detrimental, draining mental well-being and diminishing the quality of the output. What was once an advantage morphs into a disadvantage. That shift is part of the paradox. The same effort that helped you excel in the short term can hinder you in the long run if it isn't moderated. It's not that working hard is wrong. It's that pushing it to extremes tips you into negative territory. This logic applies to almost everything humans do. Eating healthy is beneficial until it devolves into an obsession. Assertiveness is a valuable trait until it becomes overbearing. Even humility, a quality admired across cultures, can turn into self-doubt when taken too far. The lesson is that every aspect of life is an evolving continuum, where balance usually outperforms strict absolutes. If we approach each situation trying to classify everything as purely good or purely bad, we end up missing the more nuanced reality. Paradoxes also appear in human relationships. People want honesty, yet sometimes feel hurt by blunt truths. We crave connection, but guard our independence fiercely. We want unconditional acceptance, but with the flexibility to set firm boundaries. At first glance, these can look like contradictions. I want freedom, but I need security. I want to be honest, but I fear hurting others. These contrasting needs don't cancel each other out. They exist simultaneously, pushing and pulling, shaping a dynamic that isn't purely one or the other. This inherent tension is what keeps life interesting. There's always something new to investigate when black and white assumptions give way to subtlety. Indeed, nothing is ever exactly as it first appears. Everyone brings their own perspective, shaped by upbringing, culture, and personal experiences. Two people can look at the same set of facts and interpret them entirely differently. Sometimes they're not even disagreeing about the facts. They're disagreeing about the interpretation, the weight each fact deserves, or the assumptions behind them. That's another paradox. Shared reality can still yield divergent worldviews. Once you notice paradoxes operating in one area of life, you start to recognize them everywhere. A person might begin a rigorous fitness routine to gain energy and self-confidence, only to find that an overzealous approach leads to injuries and burnout. The pursuit of knowledge can expand a mind, but also reveal how much more there is to learn, which can leave some individuals feeling less certain about the very ideas they set out to master. In technology, the race to automate tasks to save time can paradoxically create new complexities and sometimes even more work for everyone involved. These patterns repeat in all fields, from economics to relationships to personal growth. Accepting paradox as a feature of life doesn't imply a lack of conviction or an inability to form solid opinions. Instead, it means keeping your eyes open to the possibility that each stance has validity within certain contexts. The recognition of paradox urges us to refine our judgments rather than abandon them. It calls for a deeper willingness to ask, where does this approach serve me best? And at what point does it stop serving me? Grappling with those questions requires humility. It also demands vigilance, since the threshold where helpful turns into harmful can shift over time, depending on both external circumstances and internal changes within a person. This mindset can lead to a more flexible, adaptive way of living. Instead of being rigidly locked into one mode of thinking or operating, we learn to pivot as conditions change. We can appreciate the benefits of ambition and still stay alert to the pitfalls of overextending ourselves. We can see the value in moderation without slipping into complacency. We can cherish closeness in relationships while respecting the healthy distance each individual sometimes needs. The life skill becomes less about picking one extreme and more about navigating the full range of possibilities with awareness and finesse. This approach also unveils another consistent theme. Nothing and no one remains static for very long. People evolve, societies transform, and knowledge expands or is disproven. If everything kept the same shape forever, perhaps black and white rules might suffice. In a world where change is a constant, nuance usually wins out. Adapting to that change requires acknowledging that paradoxes are not hurdles to overcome once and for all. They're ongoing realities that shape how we function day to day, year to year. There's an element of wonder in paradox. The fact that nothing is purely what it appears to be at first glance grants life an inherent depth. If every question had a straightforward answer, curiosity might fade. The swirling complexities we face invite us to keep learning, to remain open-minded, and to understand that the next turn of events could flip our prior assumptions upside down. Rather than seeing paradox as an annoyance, one might view it as a catalyst for exploration. Even in something as personal as self-identity, people confront paradox. The qualities we like in ourselves can become sources of conflict in certain contexts. A naturally calm individual might struggle to speak up in situations that demand urgency or fierceness. A determined achiever might find it hard to relax or let go of control when it's necessary to trust a team. Recognizing these paradoxes isn't a signal of personal failure. It's a sign of complexity. We don't have to erase one trait to develop another. We do need to strike a dynamic balance between them. All of these layers underscore that the only genuine consistency is the fact that pure absolutes rarely hold up. This doesn't mean truth itself is pointless or subjective. Rather, it highlights that truths often come packaged with conditions, contexts, and exceptions. A balanced view respects the evidence at hand but remains open to learning that each new scenario might introduce fresh variables. In that sense, life's paradoxes become ongoing lessons, teaching us to stay curious, remain flexible, and accept that no single formula will work in every situation. Many individuals try to simplify life by seeking that one right answer. They want the definitive guide to happiness, success, or health. They get frustrated when their chosen formula eventually runs into contradictions, as if life somehow betrayed them. But the moment we accept that contradictions are built into the system, we stop feeling so blindsided. We realize we can hold multiple perspectives simultaneously, see validity in different approaches, and learn from each shift. Embracing paradox can even enrich creativity. Artists, entrepreneurs, and innovators often fuse seemingly opposing ideas to produce something novel. Whether it's blending tradition with cutting-edge technology or mixing minimalism with bright bursts of color, paradox can yield extraordinary results. It pushes us to look beyond the standard approach, forging connections that at first look contradictory but, upon closer inspection, spark entirely new insights. The hallmark of a maturing perspective is recognizing this interplay in all domains: personal development, relationships, society, even scientific endeavors. The answer is rarely to stamp out paradox altogether, but to live within it, using tension as fuel for growth. It might not always be comfortable, but it fosters resilience and depth of understanding. It also staves off the boredom that might ensue if life were truly static and predictable. Allowing for paradox doesn't mean we never take a stand or develop principles. Rather, we trust that while our core values guide us, the specific applications of those values might shift depending on context. We learn to appreciate that different life stages, environments, and relationships may call for different expressions of the same underlying principle. What you believed was essential in your early career might need reevaluation or a rebalancing act as you gain more experience. That's not hypocrisy, it's learning. In practical terms, this looks like recalibrating instead of rigidly clinging to a plan. It means giving yourself permission to alter course when a once beneficial habit becomes counterproductive, or when a new perspective sheds light on what you once missed. Rather than viewing this adaptation as inconsistency, you recognize it as flexibility, a trait essential for navigating the inherent contradictions of life. Embracing paradox isn't about indecision. It's about integrating multiple truths into a coherent strategy that can bend without breaking. Ultimately, paradox is an invitation to keep exploring. Once you accept that things are rarely as straightforward as you hoped, the world becomes a canvas of shifting possibilities. You realize that any stance you take might be enriched by considering its opposite, and any solution you propose might eventually create a new problem. This realization isn't meant to discourage. It's meant to keep us engaged, thoughtful, and humble. Life is an unfolding puzzle where every piece connects to countless others, often in surprising ways. The more we acknowledge that interplay, the more equipped we are to adapt, to innovate, and to appreciate the fullness of our shared experience.